Thank you, man. I apologize for the delay.
Women with a high body count, 6+, have a greater likelihood of cheating, relationship dissatisfaction, can't pair bond, depression. And it's just disgusting. Why would any guy want that?
Actually, the last part of what that chatter said is the most important part. And it's just disgusting. That's all that needs to be. If it is the case from the man's prism that it's revolting and preferences are fine to have, then that's enough.
Sure, absolutely.
You don't need any
Your
more.
preference.
Your preference.
Your preference.
But that preference is
very
changing.
Uneven, where men feel like it's okay for them, where if a woman has a higher body count, it's a no. I think that's where there's a disconnect, and it just doesn't seem. It doesn't seem like fair.
Well, here's the
Wait,
thing.
well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You go on first dates, yeah?
Of course, I go on first.
When's the
dates.
last time you've been on a first date?
It's been a while.
How many first dates have you been on?
In my ripe age, I'm not really sure. I'll say maybe in the last year I've gone on, I don't know, eight
Okay,
first dates.
who paid for the dates?
The men have. Yeah.
Did you offer?
One time, yes, and I actually paid, and the guy decided
One in
not to get
7.
anything.
Yeah. And then, but you
One
said.
out of 8.
Oh, wait, and he didn't pay for anything.
He didn't ask for anything when I offered to pay.
Right.
So I was like, all right, fine,
that's
getting
a bit-
my own thing.
So, I mean, we can discuss about what's fair, what's unfair,
Right.
or double standards, or benefits that men receive, benefits that women receive, male privilege, female privilege. You seem to have a double standard as it relates to who pays on the first date, so what's the actual problem?
I don't think it's a double standard. I think
How-
that.
Do you pay for dates?
I have.
Okay.
Other than the fact that he didn't order anything, I was very willing to pay
But
for it
okay,
myself.
so 7 of the 8 dates that you went on just this year,
Mm-hmm.
the man paid for all of them.
Yes, because
So
he asked me out on a date, and I was like, sure.
Do you
that'd
ask
be
men
great.
out on dates?
No.
Oh, okay. So conveniently, it's just very convenient. This whole men should pay on dates. Whoever asks should be the one who pays on dates. But women conveniently never ask men on dates. So your argument as to if your argument is whoever asks should pay would make sense to me if men and women asked each other out at equivalent rates, but they clearly don't. So
Okay.
you're kind of going around the bush as to beating around the bush, or not beating
I'm
around the bush.
actually interested in
but-
how this correlates to my
Well,
thing about body
okay.
count. Why is it okay for
sure,
a man
Sure,
to-
So
okay.
here's
Thank
the
you.
example. So you were saying, well, it's kind of okay for men to have a high body count, but when women have a high body count, there's an issue with it. So you claim there's a double standard that exists, right?
Yes.
Right, and you might say, for example, as follows. If a guy himself has a high body count, it would be unfair or unreasonable or hypocritical or a double standard for, as a man with high body count, to desire a woman who has a low body count.
Oh,
But-
it's so definitely he can desire someone,
Yeah.
but I just don't think it should be shamed. Like, oh, it's disgusting.
We're not. I don't think we're talking about. Well,
Are
That's
we
what
not-
that
are
was
we
your point.
right?
To use that term
That was-
disgusting to
yeah.
describe a
To-
person
that's what I'm
because of
saying.
their
It's like,
human
why is it
experience.
disgusting for the women
no,
to have
well,
it? Okay.
I'll explain it. So, for example, body count sort of moves it far away from what a sexual encounter actually is. So, for example, and there could be differentials here. You'll probably respond like, oh, well, a woman could have a high body count, but she's been celibate for 3 years. But I'd point to it like this. For example, here's how it's disgusting. If a woman slept with a different guy the night before and she goes on a date with me and I sleep with her, that's disgusting.
To you.
To most men, that's going to be disgusting if a woman recently slept with another man, especially if she fucked him without a condom, especially if she let him come inside her.
Can I say
I'm
why?
sorry.
Can I just ask
I'm
why?
sorry.
Why do you know that?
Well, I mean,
What-
why is
what
it
would-
disgusting? Biologically, socially, or emotionally? What is disgusting?
All
Oh, yeah.
of the
about
above.
Well,
All
what
of
is-
the
Okay,
above.
can we break those down maybe
Yeah, sure.
individually?
Let's
I would
start.
love that.
Sure, actually, let's just start with.
I just want
let's
to say
start with the
really quick,
biological.
Personally, I actually wouldn't disagree with you. Now, although I have gone on dates and things like that, I would not disagree with you. I just mean in general, I just want to know why it's okay. I know she wants to discuss it, but I don't disagree. If she was with somebody, went raw, he came in her, whatever, and then goes on another date, and then that's going to happen the very next day with a new
Yeah.
person, I'm not in disagreement with you.
The main point I was going to say here is that when it comes to the unfairness, I think you're pointing towards the double standard or the potential hypocrisy. Now, the thing is, my view is, when it comes to both men and women, we are allowed to desire things in a partner, traits in a partner that we ourselves don't possess. So, for example, I wouldn't find it a double standard necessarily or hypocritical if a woman who was poor was attracted to and dated or wanted to date really rich men, I don't think that would be hypocritical or double standard. So a guy who has a high body count, for example, I don't think it would be hypocritical or double standard if, despite him having high body count, he has a preference for women with a low body count.
I think it's different because I think it's...
How would it be different? Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
think because it's morally. Like, if you're loose with yourself with other people, then, maybe it's the person that doesn't have as much money, that, like, your example was of a poor girl. Okay.
No, go ahead. I have a response, though. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So, like, if your example is like, okay, there's this poor girl or somebody who's maybe just like a server, she doesn't make a ton of money, she wants to date someone who makes 6 figures, who knows, whatever, a multimillionaire. I don't think that that's the same morally. Maybe she hasn't had the same opportunities to somebody a guy that sleeps around.
Okay, so I'll respond to that. So are you stating that when it comes to preferences, people are only entitled to having preferences as it relates to morals? Because women have, one last thing, and I'll let you respond. Women have plenty of preferences for men that have nothing to do with morals. And they also have preferences that do relate to morals.
Relationally, even to just attraction, right?
It sounds like we went off topic from shaming someone, though.
Not really. Like, we're still on...
I think it's still somewhat on topic.
Yeah.
It's kind of flow.
But go ahead.
Okay.
I'm going to let this come in, but then you can
Christopher
respond.
Murphy donated $200.
Thank you, Christopher Murphy. Sorry for the
Andrew,
delay.
you can't reason with these women. They're driven by emotion and are therefore unreasonable. Reason and logic push society, ladies, not your feelings.
That sounds like an emotional response.
But when you go home, right? Because when you go home,
Thank
you
you,
want that
Christopher.
woman with
Appreciate it.
feelings. You don't want a woman that sits there and is analytical. You don't come home to a pair of boobs that are hard as rocks. You come home
some
to
men
a
do,
soft.
and
Some do, and I mean,
but-
like I think there's a balance. There's just that balance that we have to.
You make a fine point. I would just give the quick refutation before Brian and the gal get back into it. The only thing I would say is this. It is the case, you are right, that men are perfectly happy to have women who lead with emotion in their life if they submit to them.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm more mask in my relationship, and my current partner and fiance, she's more feminine, and she definitely like
She submits?
She submits to me because like I mean she makes more money than me as a pilot and me as like a chef and doing like more gig work and stuff like that.
That
So
has
I
nothing to do with what submission is ultimately. But,
well, no, I definitely know that, but I just mean like
yeah, if you-
the
Did you
best
want
of both
to
worlds.
continue?
If you don't mind just repeating, I kind of lost track of the...
You guys were focused on whether or not it was hypocrisy, Brian.
Oh, because
if
of
there was
like
a
the
focus
more...
on the higher body count
I think
for
that
men versus women.
I mean, I think that if long term you're looking for somebody, like obviously you're going to want to connect on moral things, on compatibility is a factor in a long term relationship. So yeah, I think that if you're going to be not asking but looking for the preference of somebody who has a lower body count, you yourself should not have been like a hoe as a man.
Well, let me see if I can make a response to this by
Okay.
just asking you a simple question.
Sure.
Would it be a deal breaker for you if you met a man and he had all the right criteria? He was a millionaire, perhaps. He met the attractiveness scale that you wanted. If he had slept with 150 women, but he wanted to settle down with you.
I think if he was ready to settle down, then that's fine as long as he's clean. And now
Yeah.
it's just him and I were.
So that wouldn't be a
monogamous.
deal breaker, right?
Right.
Okay, but for men, that's a deal breaker.
But for a majority of men, I want to know why.
Yeah,
Well, it
okay.
doesn't-
So here-
maybe
but-
logically, it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
make sense.
Well, actually, it should logically make sense. Hypocrisy, people use this word the wrong way. Hypocrisy doesn't mean I'm guilty of the thing in which I'm telling you not to do. That's not hypocrisy. Hypocrisy has a experience of pretending. So let me give you an example. I smoke, but I tell my children not to smoke. Does that make me a hypocrite? Should I tell my 10-year-old they can smoke?
Well, I mean, 10 years old, there's a lot of things you shouldn't do at 10. As a parent,
Yeah,
you're gonna
but
say,
why-
"Hey," I do think that it's confusing for the child.
Yeah,
If
but
you're
the
telling
pretending,
me not to smoke.
that's why it's not hypocrisy. Pretending is what's the hypocrisy. So if I were to say it's wrong for anybody on planet Earth to smoke and then smoked, I'd be a hypocrite. But if I'm like a fat person, let's say I'm really fat, right, and I'm around another fat person and say, hey, you should lose some weight, right? That's not hypocrisy. That person actually maybe should lose some weight. You actually being fat doesn't have anything to do with whether or not that person should lose weight or not. It would only be if you said, right, I myself, right, as a not fat person, am telling you not to lose weight. That would then make you a hypocrite, right? Hypocrisy has you have to have some type of pretending associated, or it's not hypocrisy. People confuse this with just you are guilty of the same thing you're telling the other person not to do. And a great example of this. I was a former drug addict, let's say.
Okay.
And I'm telling people not to be drug addicts. Am I a hypocrite?
No, because you've changed your ways and you're trying to. I would think that as a man, you're trying to lead by example.
Right.
That's what a traditional man does.
But if I said, okay, I'm a former drug addict, you should stop being a drug addict, and secretly did drugs, would I be a hypocrite then?
Yeah.
Right. That's what actual hypocrisy is. So if
I
a
need
man,
to see the definition. No, I'm just
so
kidding.
if a man has a preference and he says, I don't want a woman who has a high body count, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's fine with his own high body count. That's not hypocrisy.
Okay.
Sad
I
for
mean,
him,
to
but-
me, I'm still not convinced. It still seems like an unfair. Like, I mean, obviously, people can have their preferences.
Well, you can say it's not fair.
Yeah, I just
but
don't
you can't say it's
understand-
hypocrisy.
I don't know.
What's
I-
hypocritical about it? Being guilty of that which you're accusing the other person, that's not hypocrisy.
Depending on the why.
But so when you say it's unfair, right?
I can't think of a better word to use.
That's fine, but
why.
let's go ahead and grant
Double
that-
standard, maybe?
Yeah.
That might be better.
Let's go ahead
Why
and
is there a
grant.
double standard? Yeah.
No,
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Let's go ahead and grant that it's unfair. So,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand where the logic is behind it. If you guys,
what do you mean?
well, you
the
guys,
logic of what?
the logic of why it's okay for I'm not going to say you, men typically always they are known for sleeping around. If they can get it, they're going to take it because maybe women. I'm sorry.
Well, can you clarify when you say it's okay, what specifically? Because I don't think I'm making the claim that it's okay for men to be promiscuous, but I am saying it's okay for a man who has a high body count
To want a woman who doesn't.
Date a woman who has a low body count or who's a virgin.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I just think it's the shame and you're disgusting and you're calling, it's
Yeah.
revolting,
Can I-
and yet they're sleeping around doing the same.
I'm actually fine with that too. I'm fine with that too.
Andrew,
So-
But are you saying it's revolting for both to be doing it?
Or just
like both to
women?
be
Well,
promiscuous?
so
or just